everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on Volume 5 of Heaven Official's Blessing! And oh my gosh, I love Pei Ming. I love Pei Ming so much. He's great. I was wrong. I'm just really excited that he's in the story, right? I'm really excited. I like that MXTX, starts him out as a character that you kind of, now to be fair, he's still a womanizer. We were talking about, I was thinking about doing like a video for Pride Month that was about like different sexualities and characters that can kind of be identified with, and I don't know if I'll be able to get it done in time for this Pride Month. I feel like I need to watch more anime and more donghua to get a better repertoire, so that may be a goal for next year. But I was looking up different things and I saw something that said like phrasexual, and I'm not as familiar with the phrasexual community, but it was talking about phrasexual as kind of the polar opposite of demisexual, because I think that at this point that Xie Lian is very demisexual. He's just like, he doesn't really have any attraction towards anybody except Wuyong. And Wuyong has been from knowing him over a lengthy period of time, and he's developed this sexual attraction he just doesn't really know what to do with. But phrasexual is the opposite of demisexual. It's when you just are in casual relationships sexually with people, but then you don't want any of it to get serious. Like, you don't want any of those relationships to develop into something more than just, oh, we're just having sex and then we're done. That reminds me of Pei Ming a little bit. Pei Ming seems like he fits that category. He just wants to love him and leave him, and that's the way it goes. Now, he leaves him with money and being well taken care of, but he's not interested in maintaining a relationship. He's like, no. There's too many women out there for me to see. Sorry. So that's just what made me think of it. So I guess if I ever did one of those videos, if I needed somebody in the phrasexual category, it'd probably be Pei Ming. Probably, but those of you who are phrasexual or have some kind of experience could probably, in the comments below, talk about it a little bit more. But yeah, I don't think I'll get to it this year, but that's probably a goal for next year, is to like research all of the anime characters that I've looked at and donghua characters I've looked at on my channel and kind of organize something for next year. It's a goal. But we are on chapters 149 to 152 today. So we're going to be looking at 149, 54 chapters spanning from pages 153 to 188. Anytime we have a 4-chapter chunk, I'm like, oh, we're going to get into it now. So I'm really, really excited. But I have some comments I want to talk about before we dive in. The pronunciation of the fetus spirit's name has been an ongoing struggle, and I've recorded ahead, so by the time I've gotten to this video, several of you have offered many comments and help, and I'm very, very happy. Anime Annie posted a video on YouTube, on Discord, that's a YouTube video talking about how to pronounce it. Melia on the YouTube comments had a really good suggestion. I think Melia's comment has been the most helpful for me so far, because I was like, I need something. My American ass cannot pronounce, like, I don't put my tongue to the top of my teeth to pronounce words very much. It's just not something with English that I have to do. There's a lot of tongue action down here. So when people are talking about Chinese words and them having having to put the tongue to the top of your mouth, I'm like, that's just not something that I feel most English speaking Americans do. So it's a very foreign concept, right? But the way that Melia said that you just say cats, and when you get to the cats, you add the O sound, so it's like cats, so I'm like, that helped out a lot. I was like, okay, cat so it's like so. I was like, maybe I'm saying it right now, so. I feel like I have a lisp when I say it, but that's fine. But yeah, I do like that. The manwa is starting back up today. As I'm recording this, the manwa is starting back up in English, and I'm really freaking excited. So yeah, as soon as I'm done reading these chapters, I'm likely going to go and read the manwa chapter, starting out, we're going way back to volume 2, right? And then coming back, and I'll talk about the manwa chapter alongside these chapters as well. So I'm pretty excited about that. It comes out every other week in English, so I mean, we'll definitely get into volume 6 before volume 2's manhwa stuff is completed, I'm sure, but that's fine. That's fine. Just give me more incentive to keep going back to Heaven Official's Blessing. But yeah, so this week we'll touch base on the manhwa chapter, and then we'll probably skip a week and then go back. But we'll get there, right? Anime Annie talks about how Xie Lian catching the red flower in the chapter previously that we talked about, like way before we started going to Mount Tonglu, was similar to him catching Wuyong in volume 3. And I was like, he still doesn't get it. It's right there. It's like right there for Xie Lian. All of the clues that Wuyong has placed down before him, everything is there, and everybody else gets it except Xie Lian. And I'm like, ugh. At least with Wei Wuxian kind of knew he was attracted to Lan Wangji, but he didn't think it was mutual, and Xie Lian doesn't even realize. I think he's slowly starting to realize he's attracted to Wuyong, but again, like Wei Wuxian, he doesn't think that Wuyong is attracted to him, and I'm like, are you blind, sir? Are you blind? So yeah, there's that. Sarah Linda reminded me that back in Volume 3, speaking of Volume 3, that Xie Lian had been seemingly forced into a relationship with a Yongin man, and that led her family to lead the revolt against the Yongins in that volume. And I was like, oh yeah. So there is again the question of, you know, who's the dad of her child. I still kind of think I think it doesn't matter. I think at this point, whether it is actually Feng Chen's baby or not doesn't matter, because Feng Chen has decided at this point that he is going to take care of Xie Lian and the fetus spirit. So. However you say it, the fetus spirit. He's decided to take care of them. So I'm very interested in seeing where that storyline goes. But I think at this point, it doesn't matter. Feng Chen may not be the daddy, but he's going to be the daddy who steps up by the end of this. I guarantee it. But we just have to wait and get there, because MXTX loves to start a plot point and then like put it aside until we need to come back to it, right? Speaking of which, Sarah Linda talks about the reason why this part was kind of confusing, because Sarah Linda was like, well, Mu Qing may use, because we were debating like, why would Mu Qing be, you know, imitating Fu Yao except to run away from the situation? And Sarah Linda was like, well, Mu Qing has a grudge against Xie Lian. And I'm like, when did they have a grudge? I'm like, Xie Lian, I don't want this confirmed or deconfirmed. I'm just going to share my thoughts with you all. I don't want y'all to deconfirm or confirm it, because I'm sure at some point we're going to go back to Mu Qing and we'll get answers settled. But just to air my thoughts on it, because I have people in the Discord say, well, what do you think about this? Well, here's my thoughts on Mu Qing as Fu Yao and the whole idea of the grudge thing, because I don't want this confirmed or deconfirmed. I can only stress it in big letters. Please don't confirm or deconfirm. Let me wallow in my ignorance. Ow. But I don't think Xie Lian has a grudge against Mu Qing, because Xie Lian has communicated with Mu Qing before. The only thing I could think of is when Feng Chen told Xie Lian to watch out for Mu Qing, but Xie Lian was just kind of like, I don't know what to do with that. Okay, Feng Chen, woo. But I don't know if Mu Qing has a grudge against Xie Lian. The book hasn't really talked about it. So again, y'all, make sure that what you're talking about is contextually stuff that I've seen and not stuff that's going to happen in the future. Because I'm like, does he have a grudge? I don't think he does. I was like, that doesn't make sense to me. So I'm just going to put a pin in that, and maybe we'll touch base on it later. But Xie Lian has talked to Mu Qing and Feng Chen fine. Feng Chen just said to watch out for Mu Qing, but Xie Lian just kind of took it as, okay. And I don't even think that Mu Qing heard him say that. So I don't know. I'm like, y'all, don't be giving me hints or clues. You know how this works. So I don't know. I don't know what to do with that. And then Keon Fong in chapter 94, way back in chapter 94, I was like, this is a callback. Back then, Keon Fong said that in chapter 94, which was like a ways ago, the illusion that Xie Lian showed that was given to him by the fetus spirit showed all these toys in his baby room, like all his clothes neatly folded up. And Keon Fong noted that we also saw the charm for the baby that we believe Feng Chen gave to Xie Lian. So Keon Fong's point was that clearly, regardless of whether So was an accident or a mistake, as their name implies, at this point, Xie Lian had accepted she was having this baby and was really excited about it. So again, we don't know if it's Feng Shen's baby or if it was a baby out of circumstance. But regardless, and again, this kind of touches base on my point about Feng Shen as the dad. The point is, Xie Lian wanted this kid. She decided that she wanted to have the baby. She was excited about it. She had all the things for him, and tragedy struck. So that's the facts of the situation. And Feng Shen, regardless of whether he's the actual biological father of this fetus spirit or not, has decided to take up an interest as well. So I think that's the important thing to know. It doesn't really matter who the actual father is, or if Xie Lian, had this relationship with Feng Shen, that's where the baby came from or not. The point is that they both love this kid and have a vested interest in them. So yeah, that part's very interesting. So yeah, them's my comments for this section of chapters. I don't know, when we last left off, we were starting Pei Ming backstory, which I was really excited about. We've met Rongguang, who is, you know, potentially the one that this sword perhaps is named after, and him and Pei Ming's relationship is being explored. And when we left off, Pei Ming was about to go and betray, you know, overthrow the king of his kingdom alongside his soldiers. But we know that at some point he betrays all of them, because that's what Rongguang has said. So I don't know. I woke up this morning and I was like, today's the day. We're gonna read Heaven Official's Blessing, and I'm really excited. So, with that being said, we're not going to waste any more time. We are going to start chapters 149 through 152 of Heaven Official's Blessing. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Chapter 149, Panic Left and Right, East or West Undecided. Ooh. So did General Pei win or lose? Pei Su said he won and lost. All of the insurgents died to Pei Ming's sword, and among them were many veterans who shared decades of friendship with him. The sword Ming Guang had always been used to fight alongside them, and now it had become a weapon to butcher them. Just as the slaughter was coming to an end and the results of the fight were clear, the ruler of Zhuli judiciously ordered for the bloodied, barely mobile Pei Ming to be surrounded under the offense of treason. Pei Ming was good at fighting wars, but if the battlefield wasn't one of real swords and weapons, he might not be victorious. He was clearly fighting foes and defending the throne, but in the end, he only won a kill on sight. Pei Ming held that pot in his hand. It wasn't that he didn't hear what they were discussing, only he didn't have time to care. I should have known it was you. This is very much your style. Thinking back, it must have been Rongguang's resentment possessing the broken sword. So thoroughly dyed in the blood of millions. Connecting with its bitterness had allowed him to survive this long. However, the voice inside the pot was still cold. Your brothers are all long dead. I'm nothing but a sword. Xie Lian knew that he never might admit to it, and continuing to question would be fruitless. Never mind, General Pei. Pei Ming nodded and returned the pot to Pei Su. Thus, they subdued the 2 particularly nasty ghosts, overlooking all others. This could be considered a good start. General Pei and I will continue further into Mount Tonglu, Xie Lian said. Banyu, how about you two? Will you go find the Lord Rainmaster? The Lord Rainmaster has already gone ahead to chase after the ghosts who kidnapped the farmers, Pei Su said. If we go, it'd be the same way. So we're willing to assist General and your Highness and join you. Oh! Pei Ming snapped out of it and knitted his brow slightly. Then we best hurry. The ruler of Yushi isn't a martial god, but went on before us, so they might run into danger ahead. Okay, so the Rainmaster, yeah, just like the Windmaster, the Watermaster, they're not a martial god. Okay. Thus, Xie Lian picked up Huachong, touched Banyu. Banyu tucked the 2 pots away, and the party hastily made their way deeper into the thick woods. Good, I'm glad that they were joining them. I was afraid Pei Su and Banyu were going to leave too soon. Although I worry, you know, with a big party, there's lots more liabilities. So, yeah. Since they were still situated on the outer edges of Mount Tonglu, they didn't run into any impressive characters. Most were nothing but weeds. The group wasn't interested in fighting at all, going past them. Some were foolish enough to challenge them, but they were all scared away by Banyu and Pei Su's snakes. Thus, after a day of journeying, they had finally left the forest and entered the 2nd level of Mount Tonglu. Oh, so we're just gonna it's like Dante's Inferno. We're just gonna keep getting deeper and deeper into Mount Tonglu. Here, the woods were growing sparse. The roads were growing wider, and there were traces of habitation. Xie Lian even saw off the side of the road a broken down, blackened little house, which was exceedingly bizarre in this isolated land. Why are there houses here? Banyu and Pei Su didn't know. I'm afraid this is something you'll have to ask that Lord Ghost King in your arms. I just love that Pei Ming likes to remind Xie Lian of the intimacy he has. After Xie Lian asked, he'd already thought that if Huachong was awake, then he'd for sure have to answer his questions. He looked down. Although Huachong's unusually hot body temperature was gradually cooling, his eyes were still shut, and Xie Lian couldn't help but worry. Pei Ming reminded him, Your Highness, we're about to enter the next level. What we will run into further ahead will be even more powerful. Shall we take a break and wait for Huachong Zhu to wake up? Just then, the group of them had come to a fork in the road. One path headed east, and the other west. Xie Lian contemplated and hummed. The night has deepened. Let's camp here for the night. After traveling for the day, it was time to rest and focus on shielding Huachong to help him recover. Banyu spoke up. Pei Su Gege also needs to rest. Only then did the group remember that Peisu was mortal at the moment and required rest as well as sustenance. It was just that he had been silent the whole time. Xie Lian had cursed shackles on his body and was also the same, but because of his worry for Wuyong, he had completely forgotten. The group of them thus stopped at this fork in the road and built camp. Banyu started the fire and Peisu went hunting. Xie Lian saw everyone was busy minding their own business and started staring at Wuyong's face again. A moment later, instinct made him whip his head around, and sure enough, Pei Ming was watching the two of them. The two stared, and Pei Ming huffed a dry laugh. Fine, I'll go away. Oh my God, Pei Ming! No, it's fine, Xie Lian said. It wasn't like he was thinking of doing anything that shouldn't be seen, so why did it make it sound like he was thieving around? Just then, Banyu walked over with a pot of food. General Hua, what is it? The black pot had within it a terrified wild chicken that was tied up. Banyu showed them the pot. Peisu caught it to have me cook, but I don't know how. Oh, don't let Xie Lian cook! After Peisu hunted, he then went ahead to scout. Pei Ming, on the other hand, seemed to be dissatisfied with Banyu no matter how he looked at her. He berated presumptuously, aren't you a girl? Fighting and killing all day, never mind not painting your face. How come you don't even know how to cook? Pei Ming, don't be sexist. Leave her alone. Xie Lian and Banyu were speechless. Banyu wasn't a delicate girl raised in a normal household and had not a clue of how Pei Ming judged beauty. She couldn't understand his words and was puzzled. As for Xie Lian, he had pretty much figured out things by now. Pei Ming was someone hard to describe when it came to women. Put it down, Banyu. I'll teach you, Xie Lian said. Banyu already deeply admired him, so she happily followed his instructions. An instant's time later, Xie Lian was pulling the colorful feathers off the wild chicken, and Pei Ming raised his blood-soaked hands. He lamented, the chicken-killing general and the feather-plucking crown prince can be considered famous sights now. Xie Lian had watched him kill the chicken with his bare hands, a bloody and grimy sight. Pei Ming, couldn't you have used a knife or something? It would have been cleaner. And is there one? Pei Ming retorted. Just as the words left his lips, they both glanced at the two pots sitting on the ground at the side. Guang, who was inside the pot, seemed to have noticed the two particular looks, and the pot shuddered violently. Get out of here! Scram! Far away! Careful! I might just smear venom on my blade and poison you all! The two hurried away. Once they were sure the pot couldn't hear, Pei Ming shook his head and said to Xie Lian, and he keeps denying it. He always had that temper. Of course it's him. Xie Lian had also heard how Guang cussed at Pei Ming, and had long grown an odd sense of sympathy. I understand completely. I was just about to say, I have a little cousin who's somewhat like General Rong. He knows more cusses, but doesn't know how to do much else. At least Guang could help Pei Ming fight battles. If Qi Rong was to go help Xie Lian fight battles, then even before Xie Lian was killed by enemies, he'd already been ruined by Qi Rong. Pei Ming seemed to have imagined what a Guang who only knew how to cuss but didn't know how to fight was like, and remarked earnestly, that is indeed frightening. I forget that Pei Ming doesn't know Qi Rong. Like, Feng Xin and Mu Qing know him, so that wasn't surprising, but I forget that Pei Ming has no clue who he was like. Pei Ming would probably hate Qi Rong, I'm sure. Xie Lian threw the now fully plucked wild chicken back into the pot, filled it with water, and started cooking it atop the fire, adding some wild fruits and herbs every now and then to add flavor. Banyu copied him and tried very hard to find anything that looked edible to stuff into the pot. Pei Ming didn't know what they were doing since he'd never entered the kitchen himself and didn't see any problems. So he helped by adding firewood. Oh my God, they're not going to be able to eat it. Your Highness, I've always had a question I wanted to ask you, but since we weren't acquainted, it wasn't appropriate to ask. It was true they weren't close. Before, Xie Lian's impression of Pei Ming was pretty much a physically skilled but ill-mannered womanizer, and they'd even faced each other a couple of times. Yet now that they'd crossed paths a few times, unknowingly his opinion had changed, and the relationship could be considered somewhat friendlier. It's like Xie Lian's relationship with Pei Ming is ours as well as the audience. By all means, General Pei, please ask. You've been banished twice, with 2 cursed shackles on your person, Pei Ming said. After you ascended for the 3rd time, you could have asked the Emperor to remove them. So why didn't you? Xie Lian watched as Banyu thought really hard before cheerfully pulling out a few long white red scorpion snakes and putting them into the bubbling pot. No! He replied easily, well then, General Pei, I've got a question to ask you. Please, General Pei said. How come after you snapped Ming Guang, you never forged a new sword as a spiritual device? What an unpleasant question. Likewise. I never thought it was a beautiful tale. I get you. He was about to speak when suddenly there was movement behind and his heart jumped. So long! Sure enough! Wuyong had sat up. Xie Lian was surprised and delighted. He immediately went over to hold him up by the shoulder. "Oh, so long, you're awake. You seem bigger." Indeed, before Wuyong only looked to be a little older than 10, but now he appeared at least 13 or 14. When he spoke, his voice had also changed from that of a child to the slightly raspy voice of a teen. "Yes, thank you, Gege, for giving me relief." "What a joyous occasion," Pei Ming commented. "No need to thank me. He replied before he noticed the word relief. His smile froze, wondering eternally, "It's not what I think it is it?" The next second, Wuyong grabbed his shoulders. He said darkly, "Your Highness, listen to me. Something is coming rapidly from the east. You must get away for now." Xie Lian was taken aback. They both looked to the east, like they could see through the endless black night and see any figures skulking in the darkness. Although Xie Lian didn't sense anything, he said very still, "Very well, we'll take leave." "Where to?" The fork in the road only had two paths, and Xie Lian said, "The west." Manhua grabbed the pot cooking over the flames, looking like she was going to bring it along, and said, "Pei Su Gege hasn't returned yet." Just as she spoke, a shadow came hurrying from the west. It was Pei Su who had returned from scouting. "General, don't go down this road. There's a large number of ghosts coming this way." "How many?" "Judging by the tremors on the ground, at least 500. As a martial god, unless there was absolutely no choice, retreat would never be considered. "Do we go west or east?" Wuyong said with conviction, "West." Xie Lian answered too, "West." For some reason, although there were more ghosts coming from the west and not a single shadow in the east, Xie Lian's instincts told him the west must be the safer choice from the east. Without further ado, the group hastily went on their way. Xie Lian was already prepared to kill without hesitation should they run into the first wave, but after running for several miles, not a single movement was detected and he was rather puzzled. "General Pei Jr., when and where did you see this overflowing 500 ghosts that were approaching?" "Just nearby here. At the time, they were only 5 to 6 miles behind me and they were going very fast. Then this is strange." The group continued to run west, and those 500-some ghosts were running eastward. Both parties were fast, so they should have bumped into each other by now. So why was there not a single ghost, not any movement? Little Pei wouldn't have heard wrong. Maybe they went back the way they came. I don't think that's likely. Their pace was really fast. It sounded as if they were running for their lives. Suddenly, Xie Lian stopped in his step. Not just him, but the entire group stopped. Because ahead of them, there was a field of corpses blocking their way. Suddenly, those corpses, some were beasts, some were men, bodies of all shapes and sizes. There were even battered souls, wisps of black smoke, and ghosts, fires floating in the air, an exceedingly chilly sight. Xie Lian squatted down to check and said they were running for their lives. They just didn't succeed. After Pei Su heard them, he immediately turned back to inform Xie Lian and the others. It was right after he had left that something had pursued and killed them all in one go. "It's the work of one person," Wuyong said. Xie Lian nodded. If both parties were in great danger, in great number, then the kill wouldn't be this clean and the battle wouldn't have ended so straightforwardly. And to have killed over 500 ghosts and monsters in such a short period of time, no doubt it was something stronger than the swift life-extinguishing blade, so it seemed it was the one they should keep their eyes on. Banyu holding a pursuit pot. "I hope the Lord Rainmaster didn't choose this path." "No need to worry. My lord has the guardian steed," Pei Su said. Right at the same time, Xie Lian heard a strange chattering noise from not far away. He went over to look, and there was a skull whose jaws were chattering. The noise came from within it. When it noticed someone had discovered it, it cried, terrified, "Mercy! I'll never come back again! I want to go back! I want to go home!" Xie Lian cupped it with both of his hands and said gently, "Don't be scared. We're only passing by. Can you tell us what just happened here?" You're a passerby. Well, don't keep going onwards anymore. There's someone really scary ahead, counting us. He's already killed over 1,000 ghosts. He's still dissatisfied. He's still over 1,000. That was way more than they imagined. Who is it you speak of? Do you know what its name is or title or what it looks like?" "No, I didn't see very clearly. It didn't take long for him to kill us. I only faintly saw it was a black-clad man, very young, his face very pale." "Sounds a little troublesome," Pei Ming said. "Your Highness, Hua Chongzhu, are you sure we should be heading westward right now and not east?" The skull heard and shrieked, "Oh, the east won't do either, not the east!" "What happened in the east?" "Oh, we don't dare go east, which is why we chose west, because on the road to the east, there's a white-clad young man who within a day had already killed over 2,000 ghosts. He's more terrifying than the one in the west." "A white-clad and a black-clad? What? What? Oh! Over 2,000. Chapter 150, the panic left and right, east or west, undecided too. Hearing this, everyone's expression stiffened. Xie Lian glimpsed at Wuyong and said, "It seems it was the right choice to pick the west road." Either road is a mistake. There's no path to take. Indeed, for normal little minions, either direction was obliteration. No matter east or west, either could easily crush them, no matter which road they choose. The end result was to be blown to smoke and become fertilizer for the others. After dry howling a few more times, the ghost fires in the skull's empty sockets gradually went out. Xie Lian gently placed it on the side of the road. So Long, do you know what the creature in the east is? I can't be sure right now, Wuyong replied, but it's still coming this way. Under the current circumstances, I don't recommend we face it head on. The one in the west is a little easier to deal with. Very well, then we'll continue westward. The group of them traversed through that field of corpses and hurried on their way. They walked all night, but never ran into that black-clad man the skull spoke of, nor did they see any trace of the Rainmaster, and Xie Lian couldn't help but start to worry. As they journeyed, the houses and buildings alongside the road increased in number, and soon they could even recognize that these were in the impoverished slums. This was the theater house for leisure. This was the general store. This was the backyard of a wealthy household. The road they walked beneath their feet was also paved by people. The patterns of the bricks could still be faintly seen. This was obviously a prosperous little town, only it was empty of living and strangely desolate and quiet. There was an old well on the roadside, and when the water was pulled up, the water was still relatively clean, so the group decided to rest there for a bit. Xie Lian and Pei Su both drank a bit of water and washed their faces, and when they looked up, Manhua had walked over. She held up the black clay pots this whole time and had been waiting for a long time. General Hua, Pei Su, Gege, eat something. Oh, she's been holding that pot for a long time. I would have refrigerated that. All right, thank you for your effort. Thanks for your hard work. Let's give this a try. The group gathered. However, the moment Manhua opened the pot, many faces stiffened. Although the smell was colorless and formless, the instant Manhua removed the pot, it was as some mysterious physical object had twisted all the air around the mouth of the pot. The group stared at the sight within the pot for a long time. Their pupils reflected an endless, bottomless darkness, like it could pull them into the abyss. No words could describe the sentiment expressed within their eyes. A moment later, Xie Lian patted Manhua's shoulder and gave a thumbs up. Oh, it's not bad. It's good for the first time. Pei Ming looked at them in disbelief. It's her first time, but is it your highness's first time? If I recall, you made her follow your every step, and you've done more than she did. I knew there was something not right with what you two were doing, but it wasn't just my imagination. But Wuyong spoke up. Is that right? Well, since Gege made this, I've got to try it. Hearing this, Pei Ming and Pei Su's faces whipped around to look at them, their eyes full of awe, terror, respect, and other such emotions. Gege, what's this dish called? Wuyong asked. Xie Lian cleared his throat lightly. Toppled phoenixes. Good name, Wuyong complimented earnestly. Toppled phoenix is an idiom that means to mess up or to mess around sexually. Xie Lian! I'm sure he meant the former, but Xie Lian! He reached into the infinitely dark pot. The way Pei Ming and Pei Su watched him, it was like they were anxious he was going to be swallowed whole by the pot. However, Wuyong calmly and easily took out a small burnt piece of something that resembled a broken corpse and serenely placed it in his mouth. How is it? Pei Ming asked. Tastes like its name, Wuyong said. Pei Ming turned to Pei Su, whose expression was unreadably complicated. It's made for you. Enjoy. Pei Su! He took the pot from Banyu's hands and expressionlessly reached a hand in. Xie Lian used the cold water to wipe his face again, fixed his hair, and turned around, no longer looking at the others. He scanned the surroundings and asked, how come this land, isolated from the rest of the world, has so many traces of settlement? Is Mount Tonglu really inhabitable? He already had this question. He asked this question the day before, only there was no one that could answer him. Now there was. Wuyong replied, it's inhabitable, but that was a long time ago. Mount Tonglu is the size of 7 fortress cities. Its territory spread far and wide. It used to be an ancient kingdom. These houses are all historical remains of cities and townships. The closer we are to the heart of the kiln, the more relics there will be, the more prosperous they'll appear. Xie Lian didn't answer this question at all. Didn't question this answer at all, I see. Just then, Pei Ming's voice came from behind them. Little Pei, what are you doing? Men don't kneel so easily. Get up! Xie Lian didn't turn around. What's the name of this ancient kingdom? Oh no! Pei Su, Xie Lian's not paying attention to him, collapsing from the food. What's the name of this ancient kingdom? So long do you know? Wuyong didn't turn around either. His fists hung easily to his side. The kingdom of Wuyong. Pei Ming admonished, Your Highness, do you have an antidote or something? You can't just leave him like this. And you, what are you feeding him? What's with this snake? It's still moving around after it's been cooked for so long. Didn't it become a spirit? Manhua seemed to be unceasingly kowtowing to apologize. I'm sorry. It's indeed turned into a spirit. I didn't know how long it'd cook for it to become a spirit. I'm sorry. Xie Lian supported his cheek with a hand and pondered. I'm ignorant and ill-informed. I don't seem to recall hearing the name of this kingdom. How ancient is it? I love that Xie Lian and Huachong are trying to like do a history lesson and Peisu's dying. Xie Lian, however, just as the words left his lips, he wasn't so sure anymore. Wuyong. Hearing it from out of the blue, it did sound foreign, but he thought about it deeply, and he seemed a long, long time ago someone somewhere had uttered it before. The details aren't clear, Huachong said, but it must be older than the kingdom of Shanla, at least by 2,000 years. Xie Lian looked around at the surroundings, but looking at these buildings, they don't look like they've lived through 2,000 years. Naturally, Huachong replied, because most of the time Mount Tonglu isn't open to the outside. It's sealed within a massive mausoleum and completely shut out from the outside world. They would, of course, be kept in good state. Xie Lian bowed his head and became pensive. On the other side, Ming finally let Pei Su to his own devices and came over. Lord Ghost King sure knows everything, but isn't this information rather too out of this world? Might I ask what your source is? I've never heard a single word of any of this going on the outside. Huachong didn't look at him. And might I ask General Pei, what kind of individual has the ability to gather this kind of information in Mount Tonglu? Well, logically, any ghost can, Pei Ming said. But by Mount Tonglu's slaughtering rules, the more valuable information one wishes to obtain, the longer one must remain. So it must be a powerful individual. And what kind of individual can come out of Mount Tonglu after gathering all this information? Huachong asked. Well, it must be a supreme ghost king like my lord, Pei Ming said. So, I gathered this information myself. As long as I don't speak of it, of course there wouldn't be any word of it going on to the outside. He finally turned his head back and mocked slightly. To the heavenly officials of the upper court, keeping secrets might be more difficult than passing a heavenly calamity, but not so for me. Oh, the shade thrown! He wasn't wrong. If information of such magnitude was to be learned by some heavenly officials in the upper court, it wouldn't take 2 hours before it could be heard, being excitedly discussed in every spiritual communication array. That Huachong was able to keep this in for so many years without selling it to anyone, didn't speak of it to boast. It showed how mature and resolved he was. I get it, Pei Ming said. It appears that when it comes to His Highness, not only is Huachongju knowledgeable of all, but would also tell you all that he knows. Oh no, Xie Lian said suddenly. Everyone turned to look. What, no? Xie Lian had been deep in thought earlier, and now, finally, his right hand folded into a fist and lightly tapped his left palm. I said earlier that I don't think I'd heard the name Wuyong before, but that's wrong. I have heard the name before. Gege, where did you hear of it? In my youth, when I was training at the Royal Holy Pavilion in Shanla, my master was the Goshi of Shanla. When he first took me in as a disciple, he told me a story. Actually, it couldn't be considered a story, more like instilling some grand, glorious imagery of legends in Xie Lian's mind. Once upon a time, there was an ancient kingdom, and in that kingdom there was a crown prince who was ingeniously talented, intelligent, and clever, skilled in both martial and literary arts. He was a scintillating character that only appeared once in history. He loved his people, and his people loved him. Long after he died, his people never forgot him. The Goshi spoke solemnly and tenderly, "My child, I hope you will become a person like him." At the time, young Xie Lian sat poised and proper and said without thinking, "I don't want to become a person like him. I want to become a god." Xie Lian said, "If that crown prince was really as amazing as you say, how come he didn't become a god? If people really never forgot him, then how come I've never heard of anyone speak of his crown before?" Xie Lian swore that when he first raised those questions, he never intended to provoke or rebel. He was just really curious, looking for answers to his queries. But after the Goshi heard him, his face turned quite the shade. Why could Xie Lian recite the Ethics Sutra backwards and forwards like it was nothing? Because that night, the Goshi made him copy the Ethics Sutra 100 times to do good by its name and cultivate both the mind and the body. Xie Lian deeply suspected that it had not been for his honorable status of crown prince, the Goshi might have made him kneel on nails to copy the scriptures. In any case, after that, every word of the Ethics Sutra was deeply burned into Xie Lian's brain. At the same time, a tiny impression of this crown prince of Wuyong remained. Xie Lian had always enjoyed reading, but had never come across any records relating to the kingdom of Wuyong in any old scrolls, so he figured the story was something the Goshi made up to educate him, or perhaps the Goshi had played cards too much and remembered wrong. However, he didn't feel the need to blow his cover, nor the need to copy the Etheric Sutras for another 100 times, so he didn't bother to fight for the truth, and he didn't take it to heart. Your Highness, it sounds like this Goshi of your Shanla has quite the background and knows a lot. Pei Ming asked, what happened to him? Oh, now, of course we're going back to this! Oh my god, I don't know. After Shanla fell, there were many people I never saw again. Oh my god, is he one of the ghosts? Is he either the white clad or the black clad? Oh my god. Oh no. What's there? I mean, he's not Bai Wusheng. We know that. He was about to stomp and break the bones of whatever it was, but when he looked down, he breathed a sigh of relief. General Pei Jr., what are you doing appearing like this? That was close. I almost ruined your hand. The hand indeed belonged to Pei Su. His entire person was sprawled on the ground, his face in the mud, his 2 arms outstretched, one hand gripping Pei Ming and the other Xie Lian. What is it you want to say? Banyu was holding her pot. I don't know. Earlier, Pei Su Gege kept crawling all over the ground. I seemed to discover something important. Oh? Pei Ming was amazed. You can find something even in such a state? As expected of little Pei. What did you discover? Pei Su loosened, the hand gripping him, and pointed in the direction. Xie Lian looked in the direction he pointed. This is... They all gathered to examine. Oxen hoof marks. He finally raised his hand and croaked, this is the mark left behind by the Lord Rainmaster's protection steed. Pei Su Gege, your commas are all over the place. Banyu remarked. I'm all right, Lord Rainmaster. Lord. He got stuck on the word Lord and couldn't continue on anymore. Could he be poisoned by the scorpion snake? Their poison doesn't work like this, Banyu said. Huachong said the Rainmaster already ran into the black-clad man in the west and fought a battle. Woo! Okay. Chapter 151, panic left and right, east or west, undecided 3. Really? How can you tell? Huachong was about to speak when Pei Su, whose speech was broken, extended his trembling finger and started writing on the ground. Out of some strange respect, the group gathered to watch him. Crookedly, the words battle formation were formed under his finger. Once he was done writing, it looked like he'd used up the last bit of his energy. He clenched his hand to his fist and stopped moving. Huachong raised his head. This is it exactly. The protection steed of the Rainmaster is a black ox, transformed from the golden beast on the knocker on the gates of the royal cultivation hall in the kingdom of Yushi. Usually when it walks, it doesn't leave any trace of itself, but when it enters battle, it changes form. So this hoof mark is different than the shape of its normal hoof marks. It's much bigger. The Lord Ghost King is shockingly well informed, Pei Ming commented. And Huachong ignores him. Gege, look here. You're right, this hoof mark appeared very suddenly, so it must have been sudden when he ran into the enemy. Yes, and this hoof mark is deep, so it's obvious the enemy wasn't weak. The ox fought the enemy here with its horns and was pressed deep into the earth more than 2 inches. The two were simulating the fight scene that had just passed, and Pei Ming also didn't back down, but in the end, both sides ended in a tie. That's right. There was no trace of blood around, nor dispersing essences of evil, so it appeared that they had ran into each other. They matched quick and hard, but once they found each other a pain to deal with, they abandoned the fight. Huachong informed them that the creature in the east had changed its direction, and the group continued westward, but their pace had slowed. Soon, a giant peculiar building appeared on the side of the road. Looking at it from afar, it was more impressive than all the other houses around, even though some of its enclosures and eaves had collapsed. It still had a certain awe-inspiring presence. Xie Lian unconsciously stopped in his step. What is this place? Wuyong's divine temple. Pei Ming had one of Pei Sum's arms hooked over his shoulder to drag him along. And how does Huachong know it's a divine temple? Because that's what's written on it, Huachong said. Hearing this, the group looked up. On the surface of the stone beam before the gates of the building, indeed, there were an engraved row of giant characters. Although worn from the ages and scratched up from strange marks, they were still considerably clear. After some silence, Xie Lian said, there's certainly writing, but he couldn't understand the writing at all. He'd never imagined that not even something like this could trip up Huachong. He turned to Xie Lian. The gist of the meaning to the row of words is, Eminent Crown Prince descends with light to shine everlasting unto the land of Wuyong. And such nonsensical praise. Gege, look, the last couple of characters at the end there, don't they resemble Wu and Yong? When he heard Eminent Crown Prince, Xie Lian's expression twitched unnoticeably. He looked closer. Although that row of characters looked like a child's drawings, all circles and curves mixed with many odd symbols. Sure enough, the words Wuyong were in shapes and strokes he was familiar with, like it was just derivative writing. Hua Shangzhu can actually read and interpret the lost writing of an ancient kingdom. I am truly in awe, Pei Ming said. Hua Chang cocked an eyebrow and smiled fakely. I stayed in Mount Tonglu for 10 years. How much can already be done in a month if I can't even interpret some words after 10 years than what I'm doing on this earth, am I right? Not even the top 10 civil gods in the upper heavens might dare to proclaim such words. So as a martial god, what could Pei Ming do? He could only smile fakely too. Perhaps. Xie Lian puffed lightly. Well, thank goodness Song Long is here. Diffuse that situation, Xie Lian. Diffuse it. I can only translate some rough Wuyong phrases, Hua Chang said. If we run into anything difficult, I'll need to ask Gege to help and we'll evaluate together. I'm sure I'm not as good as Song Long in this, but the god worshipped by Wuyong, is it also their crown prince? I think so, yes. If my master knew of the crown prince of Wuyong, then he must also knew that he ascended. So why did he tell me the crown prince died? There are 3 possibilities, Hua Chang said. First, he actually didn't know. Second, he was lying. And third, he didn't lie. The crown prince of Wuyong really did die, but it wasn't a typical death. If the emperor were here, then perhaps we could have asked if he knew this kingdom. If he knew such a person, Pei Ming said. I was just thinking about Junwu, yeah. However, Hua Chang said maybe not. The kingdom of Wuyong disappeared over 2,000 years ago. In comparison, Junwu is only a youngin'. They're of completely different dynasties. Oh, okay, good. We get some info on Junwu. Junwu ascended around 1,500 years ago. He was a famed general of a warring era who later proclaimed himself king and successfully became an immortal after ruling for some time. As the #1 martial god who had ruled for 1,000 years, his background was already completely out in the open. As for dynasties Hua Chang spoke of, he was referring to the dynasties of the heavens. Currently, Junwu was the ruler, and the hundreds of heavenly officials formed the upper court, making the current dynasty. The government before them belonged to a different dynasty. Like regimes changed in the mortal realm, the heavenly realm would also go through dynasty changes. Although the time it took was considerably longer, fundamentally it was the same. New worshippers would replace the old, and so too would new gods replace the old. Sometimes the decline of a god wasn't caused by any mistakes they may have made or been banished for. Sometimes it was because another, more powerful god had appeared, and sometimes it was for no reason other than because people's lives and beliefs gradually changed and the people no longer needed them. For example, a heavenly official who controlled horses must dwell very well. People couldn't leave their horses and carriages alone when they were in need of transportation. Who would want their horses to be strong and healthy? Who wouldn't want their horses to be strong and healthy, their travel safe? Thus, donations would never cease. However, what if one day the mortals discovered something completely new that ran faster than the horses? Then, when this new invention overtook horses, worshippers of this heavenly official who controlled horses would inevitably decrease. Such heavenly officials, flashing by like shooting stars, made up a majority of the heavens. This way of decline was the cruelest because the process could not be turned around. Unless that heavenly official jumped down from the heavens and returned to being mortal to recultivate a new path and become a brand new god and ascend, then they would be destined to watch their own decline until they disappeared entirely. Not everyone possessed such courage and fortune. The gods of the previous dynasty were said to have faded thus. Some also said it was because they caused a great calamity and fought a chaotic battle, which was why they all fell from grace at the same time. But it could not be proven, and thus wasn't really important anymore. A few centuries later, Junwu was born and created a new heavenly dynasty. Following right after him, the great number of heavenly officials of the New Age ascended incessantly, filling in the gaps for the worshippers, and gradually formed the stable upper court of today. Which meant, unless there were heavenly officials older than 1,500 years old, Junwu, there was no one who could know how the god worshipped in the kingdom of Wuyong had been silently wiped from history. The group of them crossed over. There's so much with this! The group crossed over the mostly collapsed enclosure and entered the darkened great hall. It only took a few steps for Xie Lian to notice that something was amiss. He had thought the great hall was dark on the inside because the interior hadn't seen light for years, the windows all shut. But the more he looked around, the more he found things peculiar. He walked next to the wall, his fingers lightly brushing across. When he brought them before his eyes, he said, "This is black," Hua Chang said. It wasn't that the lights were dim. It was the walls of the immersed divine hall were all black. As far as I know, almost all the divine temples in Mount Tonglu are like this, Wuyong said. It was a chilling sight. Why would the walls of divine temples be painted in a color as black as hell? Just seeing the color makes one anxious, so how could anyone worship the divine with a sincere heart in this state? They're all like this, Pei Ming wondered. Were they rotted away from neglect, perhaps? The houses we passed by earlier weren't black like this. Logically, the houses would have been the same in age. As he spoke, he continued to feel around. The lightly explored walls of the divine temple, not only were the walls chillingly black, they were also rugged, like the ruined face of a woman that was covered in scars. They were also exceedingly solid, and something clicked in Xie Lian's mind. This divine temple was burnt by fire before. How can you tell? The walls of this divine temple would have been covered with murals before, painted with a special paint, a very heavy layer. After fires had burnt them, they would turn black, and the parts would melt and change shapes. After solidifying, they would feel rugged and hard like this. Your Highness certainly knows a lot. I might as well be in awe of you, too. Xie Lian rubbed his forehead and cleared his throat. This isn't anything to be in awe of. I only know this because in the past, after many of my crown prince palaces were burnt, they ended up like this. Hearing this, the crowd fell silent, and Xie Lian suddenly remembered another thing. And that stone beam outside. There are many scratch marks on the engraved praises in the stone beam. It didn't look like they were regular wear and tear. It must have been people slashing at it with blades. Why would they do that? Because they didn't agree with the words. That's right. It's the same as breaking an establishment plaque. Manhua was slightly taken back. So this divine temple was burnt down by the people of Wuyong themselves? After some silence, Xie Lian was about to speak when Pei Ming suddenly said, "What's the meaning of this?" Xie Lian turned his head to see and saw Pei Ming raising a left arm, a scorpion snake biting deeply into his left hand, its tail swinging, trying to sting him. Manhua was ready to kneel again. "I'm sorry, I have snakes all over the place." Xie Lian didn't know whether to laugh or cry and held her up. "Manhua, don't get into the habit of kneeling to apologize. General Pei, how did you get yourself bitten by her snake?" Pei Ming raised his hand, his expression dark. "How should I know? I was only putting my arms around her, and it became like this." "Oh my God, Pei Ming!" "Then, General Pei, what were you doing putting your arm around her shoulders?" It was only then that Pei Ming seemed to notice and started to contemplate the question. A moment later, he answered, "A habit. In a dark, creepy place like this, isn't it normal to hold a woman in your arms to comfort them and calm their fears?" Manhua said, "I'm sorry, but I wasn't scared." Xie Lian understood this was nothing more than a tragedy inflicted by Pei Ming on his own itchy hands. Pei Ming finally yanked off the scorpion snake, and his left hand was already greatly swollen. "Give me the antidote, quick." "I'm sorry, all the Shanyu ferns on me have been used up." "It's all right. General Pei, your heavenly official, his swelling will go down in a jiffy." Then he turned around and continued to examine the walls. Wuyong is not sucking no poison out of Pei Ming's hands. Yeah, suddenly his eyes swept over a blackened area, and he instantly froze. "Everyone come here. There's still a face here on this wall." Oh, good, we have one more chapter. Yay. Okay. Chapter 152, 4 Heavenly Kings Hidden on Darkened Walls. Ooh, what? There really was a face. Maybe it was because the flames didn't burn thoroughly, or maybe the paint above, after having melted, flowed down to cover the image and prevented it from ruin. Either way, beneath the tip of Xie Lian's fingers, there was certainly a small human face. He started to carefully scratch away the solidified black material. Pei Ming commented while holding up his very swollen left hand, "Your Highness, is that fascinated by some mural?" "It's not fascination, but I have a daring idea." "Let's hear it." "Since we've gotten this rare chance to come to Mount Tonglu, other than stopping the potential Ghost King, perhaps we could seek the source of their origins. For example, who created them? What kind of power is supporting all of this? We're asking some huge questions. Perhaps we may even destroy it in one strike and rid the world of this disaster for good and never worry about another Ghost King being born." "That really is a daring thought," Pei Ming said. "But if Hua Chongju hasn't found anything out, then we'll probably end up wasting even more time on it. Under the current circumstances, I don't recommend doing this." But Hua Chong spoke up. "I didn't find anything out because my talents are dull and my abilities are limited. Besides, at the time, I was too busy killing. If Gege is to take the lead on this investigation, then the results will be different." No. I'm the one whose abilities are limited. San Long is much more capable than me," Xie Lian said. As if he couldn't listen anymore, Pei Ming tossed Pei-Su over to Banyu and turned to walk out. "I think I'm going to get some fresh air." He's like, "I cannot take this flirting." It actually wasn't difficult for Xie Lian to chip off a few chunks of the black hardened substance, and he blinked. These can actually be... The layers, seemingly burnt black, hard material, could actually be peeled off in large pieces. In a short span of a few words, he had already peeled off a large area, revealing a human face about the size of a baby's fist. Although the lines were simple, the expression on the face was lively. It was chasing after something. Even the passion in the eyes were depicted. The black hard material seemed to have become a protective layer of sorts, and the colors of the mural were wraps. Under the wraps were still vibrant, as if they were only recently completed. Xie Lian turned his head back. "San Long, let's do this together." San Long didn't move, but in the darkness there was a field of shimmering silver light. Soon hundreds of silver butterflies appeared silently, fluttering, and they paused on the blackened walls. Along with the uniform flapping of their wings, Xie Lian heard a small chipping sound. Like a mask shattering, innumerable small cracks crawled across the black walls. And then, crumble. The black hard material that had been covering the walls had crumbled, revealing the true image behind. A giant, colorful mural. Xie Lian raised his head to look at the wall, and he could feel his mind exploding. The entire mural was visibly divided into 4 levels. The highest level was shimmering gold light, blanketed with clouds, no people. The second level, there was only one character painted, and it was a handsome, white-clad young man. Golden light was depicted as surrounding his person, and the light was painted with the same paint as the first level. The third level, there were 4 characters depicted. Each of their faces, clothing, expressions, and gestures were all different, and they were half the size of the white-clad young man in the second level. The fourth level, which was the lowest level, had countless figures drawn, and they were again half the size of those in the third level. Each of their faces were exactly the same, their expressions open, full of passion, worship, rapture. The first face Xie Lian had peeled off was one of those faces situated at the very bottom. The lines of the mural were elegant and mature, and Xie Lian was stunned for a long time before he could speak. "San Long, have you ever seen this before?" Wuyong said slowly, "I've crossed over of Mount Tonglu and have walked through almost every single divine temple of Wuyong, but I can swear I've never seen something like this before. I don't think this mural is from 2,000 years ago. There's no way it can be. Look at how well the colors have been kept in the overall condition. I'd say at most 100 years. Maybe even fewer than that." Which meant the mural was painted on afterwards. Xie Lian pointed at the highest level. "Well, that level should be depicting the heavens, since the path of heaven sits above all sentient beings." Then he pointed at the second level. "This level should be the Crown Prince of Wuyong. Since this divine temple was worshipping the Crown Prince of Wuyong, the main character of the mural is naturally him. So he's the biggest figure in the painting, with the same color light surrounding him as the heavens. He's also only just below the path of heavens." He pointed to the fourth level. "The figures at the lowest level are all the smallest. Their face is the same, so they must be the people of Wuyong." Finally, he pointed to the third level. "But who are these for? No matter their positions or faces, they're all situated above the people of Wuyong and below that of the Crown Prince. This means their status should be the same. Are they governors or vassals or..." Wuyong walked a few steps closer and said, "Gege, look. They also have a sheen of spiritual light on their bodies." Sure enough, they did. Only because the light from the Crown Prince of Wuyong was so strong, in comparison the spiritual light on their persons was practically outshone. And then it dawned on Xie Lian. They're the heavenly officials the Crown Prince appointed after he ascended. Which meant they were the same characters as Feng Xin and Mu Qing once upon a time. Xie Lian made a round through the Great Hall and confirmed it was only this wall facing the gates that had hidden secrets. The other 3 walls were so burnt they couldn't be more than ashes. Just who left this mural behind? Who was it left behind for? And what kind of message was being communicated? With just this one painting, Xie Lian couldn't deduce much. After humming for a moment, he turned to Wuyong. "When we continue on the road, let's pay more attention to the other Wuyong divine temples. I have a feeling that a mural like this isn't the only one." Wuyong straightened in his head. "I had that very same intention." The 2 and Banyu, who was supporting Pei Su, left the divine temple. It was only then that Xie Lian remembered the other member. "Where's General Pei?" Pei Ming said earlier he was going for some fresh air and went out first, but he didn't come back. And after they dallied in the Great Hall for a good while, Xie Lian called a few times, but there was no response. "Well, I hope he hasn't gotten lost at a time like this." The 4 looked around the small, desolate town, and since they couldn't use the spiritual communication ray in Mount Tonglu, their search was fruitless. Just as Xie Lian was feeling a little desperate, Wuyong spoke up. "Gege, don't worry, I have a way." He extended a hand, and in his palm a tiny silver butterfly slowly started flapping its wings. It flew around Xie Lian, circling him a few times. Although Xie Lian thought it was precious, he didn't know what it could do to help. What? Suddenly he heard labored breathing. Soon after, the voice of a man came from the body of the silver butterfly. The man said, I never thought I'd see you here. Pei Ming. Xie Lian looked to Wuyong, and Wuyong snickered. Yesterday I placed a silver butterfly on everyone. Pei Su arduously raised his head. So you can use that silver butterfly to monitor others' every movement without them noticing you? As expected of the crimson rain sought flower. Don't speak if you don't know how, Wuyong sniped. General Pei, where are you? Who's that in front of you? I'm sorry, Gege. You can only listen, not speak. Xie Lian said, fair enough. If the listener's party could also be passed through, then wouldn't it be easily noticed by the other party? Soon after, the frigid voice of another young man said exhaustedly, Oh, Pei, a word of warning. You'd best not spew any ridiculous nonsense right now. Careful, I just might smack you to death. Oh, shit! It was Ling Wen! Oh, the black-clad man who's been killing all along the way is Ling Wen! Oh! Is it Senior Ling Wen who took General Pei away? I don't know, I'm still listening. Pei says, Noble G, what's with the fury? Shut up, I told you not to speak. I'm not the furious one, it's someone else. I'm telling you I can't control my body right now, so if I wreck you, I'm not liable. Oh, it's the immortal brocade! Who we're both in this state right now. Can't even move muscles, so who are you scaring, Pei Ming said. Xie Lian raised his head. It's not Ling Wen who caught General Pei. Right now they're both held prisoners somewhere, bound by someone. They can even suppress the brocade immortal. Who can be? Are you still wearing? He didn't say it out loud, but everyone knew what he was referring to, the brocade immortal. Yeah, he really doesn't like you, so watch what you say, Ling Wen replied. How would you know what he's thinking? Pei Ming wondered. Honestly, I can't believe you. Why would you stupidly stir up trouble? To so recklessly rob the great martial hall and break your own golden bowl, and now you've come running to Mount Tonglu. What, did he tell you to do all this? He didn't make me. I'm the one who wanted to come, Ling Wen said. Oh, Pei, stop asking questions. He's getting mad. I can feel it. Pei Ming shut up. After a while, Ling Wen puffed a light breath, seeming the brocade immortal had finally calmed. Thus, Ling Wen asked, and what's with you, old Pei? What are you coming down to Mount Tonglu? And were you stung by a million hornets on your left arm, or what? You're looking wounded like that. The golden steel bowl is an expression meaning the secure, steady job. Ah. Pei Ming's voice was aggressively aggrieved and woeful. Bad luck. It's complicated. Long story short, little Pei isn't making things easy. Things weren't supposed to be this pathetic, but who knew the moment I'd come, I'd run into my unlucky star. Think I'd let anyone drag me to this hellish place if I wasn't injured? I didn't even see who it was. Will you just say what hellish place it is directly? A cave or a house or something, so I'd at least know where to look. However, it wasn't like there was no clue whatsoever. The distance-shortening array couldn't be used in Mount Tonglu, so Pei Ming mustn't have gone far. He could hear their voices were somewhat hollow, with faint echoes, so they must be somewhere that was spacious, and Xie Lian could faintly hear the sound of water. They hadn't run across any rivers or lakes the way earlier, and there wasn't a building more spacious than the Wuyong Divine Temple. Therefore, the only place they could be was underground. But this small town wasn't that small, and that didn't tell them much. Where exactly underground? Pei Ming asked, and what about you? I hear you killed over 1,000 monsters and demons. Everyone's terrified. Congratulations. Well, you can't be the #1 civil god anymore, so why not change careers and join us martial gods? What manner of creature is this that can bind you here? Ling Wen laughed bitterly. I don't know either. I accidentally clashed with Lord Rainmaster and was dizzy afterwards, so someone probably took the chance to ambush me from behind. No need to ask, he'll show himself sooner or later. Just remember not to expose your identity. Just then a third voice interrupted their conversation. Pei Ming, Nangong Jing, you fucking pair. No need to spin your wheel of fortune. Think I don't know what's under your fake skins? What? No! Oh, come on! Oh! Why are we not surprised? You would think at this point in the story that MXTX has all these characters, all of these like unresolved plot threads that you know that they're going to weave them back together. You would think at this point, now that we're on volume 5 of 8 and we're over the halfway point, that now would not be the time to introduce 4 other potential characters, 5 other potential characters, but they said yeah. I guess, you I shouldn't be surprised because it's the rule of three, right? You always have the rule of three. Things come in threes, right? And that seems to be the pair. We always have our trio of characters going around in different stories. And so we have 4 calamities, 4 great tales, and now we have 4 deputies under this big white figure that I have suspicions about. And who says they aren't all connected, right? Who says they aren't all connected? So far, there's been a lot of connection with these characters in and out. So Wuyong, interesting. I never thought we'd have the Goshi of Shanla brought up again, but I should have known better. The moment that MXTX just casually makes a character exit the story without giving any explanation, I'm like, oh, that character's gonna come back. That's what I should have thought. But I had no idea the Goshi of Shanla would come back into the story. And I think it's a pretty significant part. So I'm like, aha. We also got Jun Woo backstory. Pei Ming, you. He got what's coming from him. But I get, and now we know why he really does not like Manhua. She's not his standard of beauty. I'm like, oh, Pei Ming. Oh, sweet, sweet Pei Ming. Didn't stop him from trying to get handsy. Glad that she was like, oh, sorry, I'm not scared of snakes. I'm not scared of the dark. Oh my God. There was so much in these chapters, as you would get with a 4-chapter set. There was so much, though, and I'm like, wait a minute, what is happening? So we got Jun Woo backstory. We got a lot of things going on. And as we're getting deeper into Mount Tonglu, and for the record, I am loving the dynamic between Pei Ming alongside Huachong and Xie Lian. The dynamic is wonderful. I love it. It's great. Pei Ming pushes all the right buttons. Xie Lian obliviously pushes back, and Huachong just stares and goes, really, we gonna go there, bitch? And Pei Ming's like, okay, point taken. Like, I love it so much. And then we have Pei Su and Banyu there. I'm glad they're okay. And then Ling Wen shows back up, because of course Ling Wen shows back up with the Brocade Immortals. So, okay. We have established, interestingly enough, that we've established that we need to, I guess, just map out all of these things are connecting, right? Everything is connecting with one another. It's all starting to tie together in interesting ways, and we just need to go through it, right? So let's just say that we have our 4 calamities, right? We have Huachong, all right, and we have I'm gonna put this right, Heshan, who is the Blackwater. Put that in the parentheses here. And then we have Qirong, right? And we have Bai Wusheng. Okay. I have some theories about Bai Wusheng and all this, tying it all together. I have some theories, right, that we're going to put together here. We know that that Huachong is from around the time of Shanla and is with we'll put down here Xie Lian, right, who is our crowned prince. He is the prince who pleased God. That is his tie-in to the 4 great tales, right? But we also have Heshan, who is tied in with the Wind Master, who we know is connected to the boy who poured wine. So there's a connection between that heavenly calamity and that great tale. Now things get a little bit complicated and weird because Qirong also has a connection to the prince who pleased God, right? There's a connection there, which is interesting. So Qirong, so 2 heavenly calamities have a direct tie-in with one of the great tales, right? And then you have the Wind Master, though, one of the great tales, who has a connection to this heavenly calamity. But it's not, but they're kind of on their own, right? The Wind Master is friends with Xie Lian, right? Is friends with the other tale, but that's really the only connecting factor together. Bai Wusheng doesn't really have a connection right now to anything. They're kind of off by themselves. I'm going to leave them over here, right? They're off by themselves. And then you have the general who snapped his sword, right? The general who snapped his sword, who is, I guess, inadvertently tied to Heshan through his buddies, the Water Master. I guess that's how they're tied together. That calamity is also tied to that tale as well. And I guess inadvertently, he's also kind of tied to Xie Lian through circumstance. But then we have the princess who slit her throat. Who slit her throat. And so far, we don't really know who this is and how they're connected. So I got a big old question mark on them. So I guess through 6 degrees of Xie Lian, the 3 tales so far, as well as 3 of the calamities, they've all tied together some way or another. They're all connected. Bai Wuxiang is off by their lonesome, although, we'll make note, although Bai Wuxiang did show up at Shanla to tease Xie Lian. So there is a connection there. Okay, so Bai Wuxiang did show up in Shanla to tease Xie Lian and cause chaos, right? We're going to put this whole chaos causer right here. So I guess Bai Wuxiang is not all by their lonesome. They are connected to Xie Lian through circumstance, right? But we're going to talk about Bai Wuxiang in this because I've got some theories. The princess who slit her throat is the only one at the moment that we know nothing about. This is the only tale we haven't connected yet. I think that Ling Wen is connected to that whole thing, but don't know how. Don't know if that's even the case. But yeah, so that's very fascinating, right? So we basically get... This story is such a tease, though, because I was fully expecting these chapters to see the sword snapping part, right? We don't see the sword snapping part. We just get it inferred that Pei Ming, who was there at the mutiny, ended up not committing a mutiny and ended up turning on his own men to protect the king. But because he was part of the mutiny at the start and they did it in his name, he was still put to death for treason. So, and that's when he ascended. So yeah, you have that. So before he was put to death, I'm assuming before he was put to death, he ascended. The story doesn't get fully completed in this chapter, which makes me think there's still a little bit left. There's still something about Pei Ming's story we're not touching on. The whole Rongguang situation, it's kind of just gone cold for the moment. MXTX is like, we've reached kind of a standstill where Pei Ming doesn't want to talk about it, Rongguang doesn't want to talk about it, and Xie Lian's polite enough not to ask. So we kind of just reached a kind of an impasse, a moment of plateauing with Pei Ming's story. But we get enough to know that he and Rongguang, that Pei Ming basically chose his kingdom over his men, which is fascinating, right? But that's what ended up happening, and then we know he ascended, so here we are. But yeah, it's interesting. I like that Rongguang's, before he stopped talking in the pot, he said, "Your brothers are all long dead. I'm nothing but a sword." Saying who knows, your brothers are all long gone. I'm just the remnants left in this sword to kind of put you, in your place. And Xie Lian, I know that Xie Lian, what I like about this scene is he relates to Pei Ming because Xie Lian knows what it's like to have your entire kingdom against you. And so he kind of just, doesn't want Pei Ming to feel bad. So he's like, hey, let's not dwell on this anymore. We're in Mount Tonglu and we're in a very dire situation. Maybe we could focus on this later. And Pei Ming's like, oh yeah, right. We'll not worry about that. That's in the past. Not going to worry about it anymore. And so they talk about going to find the Rain Master. And the Rain Master is not a martial god, although, which that kind of makes sense, that Ling Wen with the brocade immortal is the one clad in black. She's a civil god, not a martial one either. So you had 2 non-martial gods parry each other. Both were in a standstill. So they're okay, bye. And the Rain Master, because the Rain Master doesn't really care about any heavenly officials or keeping up pretense or knowing them, they don't care that it's Ling Wen. They're not going to go tattle on them in the upper court. They're just trying to find their farmers. So it all kind of works to Ling Wen's advantage that that's who she ran into, although she's in her male form, so what have you. I want to put this on here, though. So we have to the east, we have the person clad in white. Okay? And to the west, we had Ling Wen with the brocade immortal. And of course, it makes sense that Ling Wen is killing the ghosts and demons because, he is a martial god. So, or is a civil god, is a heavenly official, so that's kind of part of their duties. So yeah, it makes sense that Ling Wen was, not only that Ling Wen would be okay with getting rid of the monsters, but the Brocade Immortal is a ghost too. The Brocade Immortal is getting stronger and stronger the more. The Brocade Immortal is getting stronger and stronger the more it kills. So of course that would be a threat, right? Ling Wen, the Brocade Immortal, since it's a ghost, is going towards Mount Tonglu, but I'm a little bit, I don't know why, but it makes me feel a little bit more at ease with it being Ling Wen. When we heard that it was a black clad and a white clad figure, I was like, oh, well, hell, that could be anybody. The black clad figure could be Heshan for all we know. They're always clad in black, so that always, that was where my mind first went to. I was like, oh, it could be Heshan, but I need more info to know for sure. And then we found out it was Ling Wen, and it's like, okay, never mind. But, I mean, I don't know why, but it makes me feel better that it's Ling Wen. Even though Ling Wen doesn't seem trustworthy, there's just an air about Ling Wen, and maybe it's the fact that we've known them in this entire story that makes me think, even if they betray Xie Lian, even if they betray Pei Ming, there's just something about Ling Wen that makes me not feel like they're the big threat of the story. I feel like Ling Wen is a victim of maybe circumstance. We don't know enough about the situation. They're trying to help the Brocade Immortal for reasons, or they're trying to take it with them for reasons. I just get kind of like a Mu Qing vibe with Ling Wen. Like, they're doing questionable things, but I don't feel like I should hate them or not trust them. We'll see what we find out, right? We'll see what we find out. Now, the white-clad individual, though, we don't see a lot of characters clad in white in this series, with the exception of Xie Lian and Bai Wuxiang. So instantly my mind goes, ooh, no. And Junwu says Bai Wuxiang is dead. I don't believe him, especially after this chapter set, because I have theories about Bai Wuxiang and who they really are, and I'm like, no, I don't believe them at all. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to the mural. When we get to the mural, we'll cross that bridge. But yeah, so what's interesting is that inside Mount Tonglu, there's all these different levels, right? Which kind of, the Kingdom of Wuyong, it makes sense. The murals show levels, so it makes sense. So we're going to put Wuyong. We're going to put Wuyong over here. Okay? And it's this ancient kingdom from 2,000 years ago, from the dynasty before Junwu's. So we need to make note, Junwu is about 700 years older. He's about twice the age of Xie Lian. We need to make note of that. We're going to note that Junwu is about 1,500 years old. He's twice the age of Xie Lian. And it's really cool that they bring up Junwu's backstory. We're going to talk about it when we get to it. But Wuyong is essentially at the heart of Mount Tonglu. And that's where Xie Lian, I never thought we'd ask this question in this story, because you know how sometimes when you have lore in stories, it's just assumed that, like the practice of creating the Supreme Ghost, it's just an assumed thing. We're like, oh no, that just happens in this world. We're not going to question how or why it started. So when Xie Lian's like, let's find the origins of the Supreme Ghosts and why they were made, I was like, I didn't think we were going to go there, but yes, let's find out. Why are there Supreme Ghosts made? Why does Mount Tonglu exist? What's the point? How does it come to be? Yes, why is it in this ancient city? Tell us answers, story. So I'm really glad they're choosing to go this route, because I just thought, it kind of reminds me of Lord of the Rings. Again, there's like a Mordor vibe with Mount Tonglu, and in Lord of the Rings, they explain to you the origin of Mordor, and you're like, okay, here's how it came to be. But, a lot of stories don't want to do that. They just want to say, it's an evil mountain. Take it as surface value that it's an evil mountain. That's all you need to know. And part of you wonders, well, why is it evil? How did it get that way? But the story doesn't want to take time to tell you those answers. You just assume it and move on. And here Xie Lian's like, what if we need to find out the answers to this to kind of know how we stop the process? And I'm like, good. Yes, tell us things, Xie Lian. Have us go through this. I'm glad we're asking these questions. So yeah. So Wuyong, there's so much happening in this chapter set that I'm going to get off track very easily, so I'm trying not to do that. So Wuyong is still in his dormant state, although he is getting slightly bigger. It's coming. He's getting close to turning back into his adult state. We just aren't there yet. And they decide to camp out. Now, Pei Su and Xie Lian are not at full capacity. Pei Su's basically immortal, which kudos to Pei Su for holding out this long, right? And the only thing, ironically, the only thing keeping Xie Lian going is Wuyong. So I really like that they decide to camp out for the night, and I like that Xie Lian is just looking at Wuyong's face, like, you know, there's nothing about this moment. Xie Lian's just like, he wasn't gonna kiss Wuyong or anything. He's just kind of like looking at him, like enamored with him, like in love with him. And Pei Ming's just like leaning in, like, what are we about to do? And then they look at each other, and Pei Ming's like, fine, I'll go away. And Xie Lian's like, oh no, I wasn't about to do anything. But Pei Ming is so aware that Xie Lian and Wuyong, that Xie Lian loves Wuyong. He is so aware of it. But he also realizes that Xie Lian is like the most oblivious cinnamon roll, and he's like, fine, I'm not gonna tell you. If you can't realize it, I'm not gonna say a word, but it's pretty obvious right now. And Xie Lian's like, what's obvious? Yeah, I'm just waiting for Pei Ming to be like, get a room, and Xie Lian be like, why? And then he has to explain it, right? So Banyu, this sweet, beautiful girl, comes up being like, I caught this chicken, but I don't know what to do with it. Can you help me? Because Banyu's been a freaking ghost for like how many hundreds of years? And she was like, you know, barely a woman when she became a ghost. So, and she was also, you know, if you think about it, back in volume 1, volume 2, Banyu, she was like revered by her people as a goshi. She wasn't expected to cook, you know, she was like, you know, a vizier or whatever. So Pei Ming, I do get a little bit like, come on, Pei Ming, don't be like this. Don't be sexist like this. Because he is a little bit. He's like, you're a woman. Shouldn't you get back in the kitchen and know how to cook? And I'm like, Pei Ming, I'm liking you. Quit doing this. But we find out that Pei Ming has been said from the start that he has a very specific standard of beauty. And that's what he goes for. And Banyu completely defies that standard of beauty. She's this little petite thing. She doesn't know how to cook. She doesn't clean. She's been a warrior her whole life, like, you know, fighting off with these other ghosts and everything, and been a goshi. She is not at all what Pei Ming would ascribe to as being a typical woman, right? She's not quite to Zhangji's standard. She's not quite that, but she's similar a little bit in that sense. And so, you know, Pei Ming is just like, what is this? Like, she doesn't have like the feminine wiles that Pei Ming is expecting of her, but she's still like really cute and sweet. And I'm like, your descendant loves her. Leave him alone. Leave them alone. Let them be. But God, we'll talk about that handsy scene later. And Xie Lian's like, well, I'll teach Pei Ming and I'll teach you how to cook a meal. The funny thing is Pei Ming has no clue. Pei Ming has no clue how to cook. Also, Pei Ming entrusts Xie Lian to cooking, which is mistake number 2. I was like, oh no! So I was like, don't do it. And then they end up making the food, and Pei Su nearly dies from it. So I just love that Wuyong is like, why can't you guys eat this? This is the greatest thing. I don't understand what's going on. I love it. I love it. I'm like, y'all should have known. Just teach Banyu to cook real fast, otherwise you guys might die. And then they literally call it the, I love that the moment they start questioning Xie Lian's cooking, Wuyong sits up to start eating the food. I'm like, But before that, before he eats the food, he sits up not because they're making fun of Xie Lian's cooking and questioning it. He sits up because he senses something terrifying from the east coming to get them. And the creepy thing is, Pei Su sees the threat from the west because all these ghosts are running. There is nothing but darkness from the east. And Wuyong is like, we absolutely cannot go east. There's something terrifying there. So my first thought was, Bai Wusheng is in the east. The creature clad in white is Bai Wusheng. I'm just not convinced he's dead, okay? And until I get confirmation, I just won't think anything of it. And I don't want to know. I want to be ignorant until we find out about his character. But it just instantly made me think Bai Wusheng. Bai Wusheng, ghost clad in white, no distinguishing aura coming from that direction. Bai Wusheng just literally popped up by Xie Lian and was like, hey, sup? And Xie Lian's like, oh my God. So that just seems like the same vibe. Seems like the same vibe, but who knows? Who knows? We've barely heard Bai Wusheng speak, just being terrifying. So, but regardless, they decide to go west because Wuyong's like, let's not go east. And the ghosts were like, oh no, east was a bad idea too. I do like, they find the skull They just find like a desolated ground of corpses from the Mortal Brocade and the Rainmaster's battle. And I like the one little skull. I like that Xie Lian holds it gently, and they make a point of saying how gently Xie Lian is holding it. And he's like, oh, what's wrong, little corpse skull? Like, you know, Xie Lian is very reverent, even of the dead, even of the ghosts, which I really like. I think that lends to the idea that Xie Lian will be able to stay with Huachong after all this is said and done in the ghost city, because he's just very nice to the ghosts. Because Xie Lian's like, well, why should I judge you guys? Look at me, sort of situation. And it reminded me a lot of the Banyu arc, this whole set of chapters. And it's not just the fact that Peisu and Banyu are there and we saw Kamo, but the idea of him picking up the skull, it reminded me of the corpse that was in the ground next to all the ferns, the ferns that they were after during the Banyu arc. Like, this whole scene reminded me of that, of the skull wanting to go home and the corpse in the ground wanting to go home. Like, this, it was a very similar vibe, right? But they say he's far more terrifying than the one in the west, a white-clad young man who within a day has killed 2,000 ghosts. Now, the white-clad, the young man part means nothing, because we've established at this point that these ghosts, heavenly officials, whatever, they can hide, they can disguise themselves how many ways? So the fact that they're a young-clad man means nothing. Now, it may not be by Wuyong. Maybe. My only thing is, maybe it's a heavenly official. Maybe it's, but then why would Huachong be afraid of it? If it was a heavenly official, like if it was Fu Yao, or if it was, you know, hell, Ling Wen was being chased by Chan Yizhen. Where did he go? So maybe it's Chan Yizhen in white, but then how do you end up in the east with Ling Wen in the west? Like, what's the deal there? So we don't know exactly. And I don't think Chan Yizhen wore white. He was like wearing green, wasn't he? So I don't know. But if it's a heavenly official, you would think Huachong would sense that and be like, oh, we can talk to them. They're on our side. But since he doesn't, it makes me believe that it's something more sinister. I don't know. We don't know. And so we get to chapter 150. Like, that was just one chapter. And so they decide to take the path to the west instead. And they see all the little towns and everything, right? They see all the little towns, like this place has just been abandoned. I like the idea that Mount Tonglu is described as a mausoleum. So when it shuts up after every opening, it preserves everything inside. So with that in mind, we'll talk about the mural. They suspect the mural is only a few hundred years old. So somebody came and recreated it. That's the theory. And like hid it like for clues. It's very weird, right? So who in the world could have created it? I mean, Heshan and Huachong are not very old. They're only like, well, I mean, Huachong is, right? Heshan is not so much, but you would think if it's only 100 years old, it wasn't Huachong or Heshan that created it. So it's somebody more recent. It's not Qirong. Qirong wouldn't take the time to do it. We don't know exactly what ghost, who is the artist. We don't know. And why only put it up here within a few hundred years. Why do that? That's kind of the bigger thing. It's not an ancient mural either. So that's weird. So we got some mystery with that going on. But Pei Ming, I love that Pei-Su, like, dying from the cooking, and Pei Ming's like, this may be her first time cooking, but this is not yours. What is going on? And Xie Lian's like, I'm sorry. I love that the dish, Xie Lian calls it toppled phoenixes, which he says it's to mess up, but it also means to mess around. And Huachong's like, oh, good name for it. I feel like Xie Lian digs himself into his own grave, because on the one hand, Xie Lian, like, he says something meaning one thing, but it has an alternate meaning that Huachong's like, yes, please, I know what you're saying. And Xie Lian's like, that's actually not what I'm saying. And so it's like, and I'm sure when Pei Ming heard that, he was like, oh, messing around. Oh, okay. Just ridiculous. So then he says it tastes like its name. Oh my god. And so Pei Ming and Pei-Su are just like, what the hell is going on? But we get a little bit of information about the kingdom itself. And poor Banyu apologizing. I like that Xie Lian's like, Banyu, quit apologizing to him. I love that. I love that Xie Lian's trying to like teach her, you know, don't let him get you like that. And so then Pei Ming confronts Huachong about how he knows so much, which is pretty hilarious. Because I'm like, one, Wuyong is a supreme ghost. Of course he would have this information. He has access to all the information from all the ghosts. Why wouldn't he know this? But I like that, you know, I like Pei Ming and Wuyong can like banter one-on-one, like on an equal level. And Wuyong doesn't necessarily seem like furious with Pei Ming. Like Wuyong clearly hates Qi-Rong. Understandable. I don't think Pei Ming would like Qi-Rong either, by the way this chapter goes. But and when they're describing like how Wong and Qi-Rong are very similar. But it's funny that he questions how Wuyong knew this, and Wuyong's like, how do you think? Like, I came here to Mount Tonglu. I've been here. I knew things. I've been here for 10 years. I kind of get how all this came about. And what Pei Ming is suggesting is he's like, if you know all this, why isn't it common knowledge amongst the ghosts? And Wuyong like just shoves it in his face. Well, he's like, well, unlike you heavenly officials who just spill the tea left and right, he's like, some of us keep secrets. So how about that? And he's not wrong. The heavenly realm, he basically calls out how gossipy the heavenly court is and how it's to their own detriment. And Pei Ming's like, fine, touche, whatever. And Pei Ming like throws in that last little jab of saying, well, you may keep secrets, but you sure tell Xie Lian every single thing you can. And Xie Lian's like, oh no, that's not what happens. No, but it is, right? It is. But that's when Xie Lian's like, I remembered the name of Wuyong. And that's when this gets interesting. He's talking about the Goshi of Shanla, which we know virtually nothing about the Goshi of Shanla. Come to think of it, we don't know very much at all. He took him in as a disciple and told him the story about this city, right? So here's the interesting thing. The interesting thing is he says that in the kingdom there was a crown prince who was ingeniously talented, intelligent and clever, skilled in martial and literary arts, a scintillating character that appeared only once in history. He loved his people and his people loved him, and after he died, his people never forgot him. I want you to become a person like him. And Xie Lian's like, well, I don't want to become a person like him. I want to become a god. If he was as amazing, how come he didn't become a god? If the people never really forgot him, how come I've never heard of him before? And Xie Lian, you know, he kind of like looks back and goes, man, I was a kid then. I wasn't really thinking about, you know, how the implications of my questions could have made the Goshi feel. I was just curious. But the Goshi, you know, seemed to react very unpleasantly to those questions. Because if he was this great of a leader, why didn't he ascend? And if he was, you know, if he was so famous, how come nobody had heard of him? And the funny thing is, it ties to the fact that he remembers the Ethics Sutra left and right because the Goshi made him repeat those lines over and over again as punishment for, you know, what he said. And so Wuyong is like, well, you know, either one of three things. Either he was lying to you and was making the crown prince of Wuyong seem a lot better than he actually was. Or two, he doesn't really know why the answer is. Who knows? Or three, he didn't ascend despite being good. He was probably killed. And before he could ascend and was like a martyr. And it's like, okay. So here's the interesting thing. The Goshi has quite a background. And then Pei Ming's like, what happened to him, Xie Lian? Why didn't you keep tabs on him? And Xie Lian's like, I don't know. After Shanla fell, there was a lot of people I didn't see again. So the Goshi's going to come back in this damn story, right? The Goshi's going to come back into this story. So we don't know the Goshi of Shanla. So theory time. Could the Goshi of Shanla be the artist of this mural? Even though these characters are hundreds of years old, maybe older, there's no reason to think, because I'm trying to think of the timeline, and Xie Lian, what was it, 50 years ago, 150 years ago, had the issue with Manhua happen with Pei Su. That was kind of checked out. So maybe around that time when Xie Lian was getting involved in that sort of thing, maybe the Goshi noticed him or recognized him. I don't know. Part of me, the timeline, I'd have to sit here and like remap out the entire timeline, but it almost makes me wonder if the Goshi caught wind of Xie Lian still being around the time Banyu and stuff was happening, that maybe he started like putting things into motion, predicting that Xie Lian would maybe, I don't know. But I'm like, could the Goshi have somehow, it almost seems like the Goshi or whoever made the mural planned for Xie Lian or someone to find it. Because why would you go to an ancient town that's been abandoned and create this mural unless you were planning for somebody to find it? So there's stuff we don't know, and it's driving me crazy because it's all gonna come out in the wash. I know MXTX is gonna reveal all the secrets, but I'm like, so why did this artist make this mural 100 or so years ago? For what reason? Why? What was the point? What was the purpose? And then you have the Goshi of Shanla. I wonder if the Goshi of Shanla is the one that brought Xie Lian to Banyu. For whatever reason. We don't know. But I'm like, the fact that Goshi has been mentioned here and that Xie Lian's like, I don't know what happened to him. And it's like MXTX has red flags all over being like, this character will come back and be important. Now, this was where my whole Wuyong theory that's probably really crackpot, really crazy, probably 1,000 times wrong, but listening to the story that we get about the mural, let's just go to that first, because once I get on this tangent, then I'm probably not going to stop. So we find the hoof marks, and we find out that the Rain Master has come in contact with the black-clad warrior, which we find out was Ling Wen. They got in a standstill. Ling Wen was like, crap, I don't want to fight the Rain Master, and got out of there real quick. But they've been, Ling Wen and Pei Ming, I'm going to put them right here. Ling Wen and Pei Ming have been kidnapped by someone else. Is the person that was talking to them at the very end, is that the white-clad individual? They seem to know. They knew Ling Wen and they knew Pei Ming's actual names. So, what is going on? Is the white-clad individual the Windmaster? I don't know. We haven't seen the Windmaster Heshan. Is the white-clad individual the Windmaster? And they would know Pei Ming by their actual names. So maybe there's that. And Heshan brought them to Mount Tonglu. I don't know. But I wouldn't expect the Windmaster to tie them up, though, even if they were mad at them. I don't know. MXTX, you were leaving me with all this mystery, right? So they decide that they're gonna go try. They're gonna go try to find the Rain Master, and that's when they find this divine temple, the Wuyong divine temple. And God, what's really sad about all of this is that Xie Lian knows by the end of the story that the temples have been burned down and that this individual is no longer worshipped. The temples were burned down. There were scratch marks all over the plaque and everything. And Pei Ming's like, well, how would you know that? And he's like, because the same thing happened to me. The moment he read the thing, Imminent Crown Prince, and Xie Lian's like expression twitching, it's like, yep, that explains it, right? That something bad has happened. And he understands because the same thing happened to him. So it's like Xie Lian, and again, I'm going to tie this all into my theories. Xie Lian, my dog is like begging me to throw this toy. Xie Lian like understands immediately that this situation with Wuyong seems to be an identical situation that's happened with Shanla. Like the people there worshipped and loved their crown prince, and then for whatever reason, they burned the temples and destroyed any trace of them and their legacy. But, now thinking back on it, he was questioning why, he questioned the Goshi, why have I not heard anything about this crown prince? It could be the exact same thing that happened to him, where the crown prince of Wuyong, all these bad things happened, and then all these bad things happened to the Wuyong prince, and then maybe he had ascended, and then maybe after the people worshipped him, something bad happened, and he descended, and it kind of was like the Xie Lian story, everybody forgot about him. Because, if this had been 2,000 years ago, it was at least like 1,000 years before Shanla. That's plenty of time for people to forget about a kingdom. Plenty of time, right? So, yeah. So they find this temple, and that Pei Ming, I like that Xie Lian and Huachong start flirting in the temple, and Pei Ming can't stand it, and he's like, I'm going out to get some fresh air. And of course, that's when he's kidnapped by Ling Wen. So we get a little bit about Junwu. I like that Huachong says Junwu was only a youngin'. I'm like, he's still 700 years older than you, Huachong. What the fudge? So we get this idea that Junwu ascended around 1500 years ago. He was a general. Get this on here. He was a general of a warring era. So he was a general of war, like a martial god, who later proclaimed himself king and then ascended after ruling. So he was a general that became a king. Interestingly enough, it's kind of like Junwu was sort of like Pei Ming, except whereas Pei Ming didn't want to be a king when they told him he should, Junwu was like, yeah, sure, I'll be a king, and then went on through with it, right? But he was the #1 martial god who ruled for 1,000 years. His background was completely opened out in the open. As for the dynasties, he was referring to the dynasties of the heavens. So yeah, so basically Junwu became like the #1 martial god, and of course through that became king of the heavenly realm, the ruler, the emperor of it. And so you talk about what I like about this was a question I've been asking throughout this entire series is Junwu like the original emperor of the heavenly realm? Like, how old is Junwu? And we finally get answers. We finally find out that no, he is not the eldest thing that's ever. He's probably one of the oldest in the heavenly court at this time. He's probably the oldest there now because he started that whole dynasty. But the thing that's crazy about it is that no, Junwu is not the original heavenly emperor. There have been ones before him. There have been dynasties before him. His is just the latest one, right? And it's been 1,500 years old. So I like that bit of world building that Huachong says, no, the story has been continuing for a long time. This is just the latest installment of it. I like that. Although there is this thing that's pointed out saying that they don't really know what happened to the previous dynasty. It just faded. Some say it was because a great calamity happened and they fought in a chaotic battle. Some say they fell from grace. Who can know for sure? All we know is that a few centuries later, Junwu was born and the new heavenly dynasty came. So it sounds like there was like a dark period of chaos and then the new dynasty came to be. However, I feel like I might as well just go into this theory right now and start through this. So basically they say that Junwu is like, which meant unless there were heavenly officials older than the 1,500-year-old Junwu, there was no one who could know of how the god worshipped in the kingdom of Wuyong had been silently wiped from history. All we do know, interestingly enough, is that around the era of Wuyong, there was potentially a great calamity that wiped out the previous realm in the heavenly court. Funny that that's all tied together. That around the time of Wuyong, around the time that this crown prince of Wuyong would have been like wiped out or whatever, around that time it seems like something bad could have really happened. Who knows? Who knows, right? Who knows? So we're going to get into that in a little bit. I want to get to this mural though before I talk about all my theories. So they wonder what happened with the walls and everything, and so they end up finding out that the black over the mural is just a cover, and there's actually a mural underneath it. It's not actually destroying the mural, it was preserving it. And so before Pei Ming goes out though, his hand gets bitten by the scorpion snake. And what I love about this scene is that back in Banyu, we thought, oh my god, Xie Lian's hand got bit by the scorpion snake. It's the end of Xie Lian. And Huachong just sucked out the poison and he was fine, even though Xie Lian's like, hey, my hand's gonna be okay. The stakes felt a lot dire back in Banyu. But here, Pei Ming's hand gets bit by the snake and they're like, oh, just walk it off, you'll be fine. I love that Huachong was not volunteering to suck the poison out of his hand. He was like, hell no, you're on your own. But he was trying to get handsy in the dark. He is so conditioned, Pei Ming is, to when he's in a dark space with a woman. He's like, oh, gotta do this. He was so conditioned to it that he tried to like put his hands on Banyu and the scorpion snake bit him. And I love that he's like, oh, well, it's a habit in a dark, creepy place. Isn't it normal to hold a woman in your arms and comfort her until her fears are calmed? And Banyu's like, I wasn't scared. And then Pei Ming's just like, I see. I just love it. I love it so much that Banyu's like, I'm not your typical girl, so no, not really into that. I love it. I love that Pei Ming gets some comeuppance for trying to like get handsy with Banyu. I love it. So yeah, so he comes out there and they find out that there is a mural underneath the blackened layer on the walls. I also like that Huachong tries to like, come out and be modest. He's like, well, my talents are dull in finding things out about this. Xie Lian's the detective here. And I'm like, although Huachong does bring up a really good point. He's like, I was killing ghosts the entire time I was here. I really didn't have time to go look at murals. Which is like, there's all this grim reminder about the fall of Shanla and Huachong like killing ghosts in Mount Tonglu that make you kind of realize behind like the Pei Ming getting bit by the scorpion snakes and the funny things happening that there is some darkness there under the surface at this part of the story. It is not lost on me. So here's the thing. They reveal all these human faces and they reveal this mural. And so the fourth level of the mural is the very easy to decipher layer and translate. It's all the people of Wuyong. It's all the identical faces. It's a mass population. Then there is the heavens on top where no one is. Like the ultimate heaven, like the golden standard. And no matter what dynasty, no matter what heavenly officials, there will always be a heavenly realm no matter who is there. It's not occupied permanently by any one person, is the kind of representation and symbolism we get there. But then there's the other two layers. There is the, heavenly official that we think is the crown prince of Wuyong that's up there by themselves. And then there are 4 individuals under them, right? So I thought that was interesting. And we get one picture in this chapter set, right? And the picture is of the mural, which is different than what I thought. When I saw the mural, I was thinking they were horizontal layers. But no, you have all the people down at the bottom. You have the people at the bottom that are the people of Wuyong. Then you have the crown prince here with like all the wings and everything, looking very interesting. And then you have these four officials next to them, right? That all kind of have like a similar look. And they're looking at the mural there, all of them. Interesting, right? So they interpret this as being that the crown prince had 4 deputy generals. That's what they determine. So it's like, okay, so we potentially have a crown prince and 4 deputies of Wuyong. That's what we've got to work with, okay? Now, here's theory time. And I'm probably 1,000 times wrong, so just humor me in my ignorance. In the next 5 chapters, I may be proven entirely wrong. My theory is at this point that Wuyong is like the previous dynasty's version of Shanla, right? That they had this crown prince that was loved beyond by all others, kind of like Xie Lian, and then something happened where they fell, kind of like Xie Lian, and then the people that were worshiping him no longer did so. They were like, oh, nope, burned everything, slashed it to the ground. And we have the idea that the crown prince at that time had these four deputies, these 4 generals under him, and we don't know what happened to them. My theory is that the crown prince of Wuyong is Bai Wusheng. That's my theory, that Bai Wusheng is the crown prince of Wuyong. And instead of ascending like they were supposed to, they ended up dying and becoming a ghost and just saying, screw the world, everything was taken from me. I want to say that Bai Wusheng is maybe the antithesis of Xie Lian. Maybe. This whole time I've been thinking that ever since the first volume, I was like, Xie Lian and Bai Wusheng were both clad in white. There's just something that seems similar to them, right? And I can't be able to place it. And then we find out in volume 2, Bai Wusheng showing up at Shanla, and there being some connecting factor there, right? My theory is that Bai Wusheng, instead of ascending like they were supposed to, kind of had a similar situation to San Ling or San Ying, where, the dad, is that his name? Oh my God. I'm thinking of the little kid that was named after him, like San Ling. He, the guy from Yong back then, he was supposed to ascend, but he had the king's aura, but he hadn't ascended yet. Bai Wusheng maybe picked up on that and tried to get him to help him before that happened. I just feel, I'm trying to articulate what I'm saying, but my mind is like just full of all these thoughts. I think that Bai Wuxiang, instead of ascending, kind of similar to how the whole thing with Heshan happened, with San Ling happened back at Yongin, instead of ascending, I think Bai Wuxiang was killed. But the people loved him, and maybe the people even were like making temples and stuff to worship Bai Wuxiang because they expected him to ascend, and they were just, you know, maybe they were trying to encourage it. Who knows? Maybe the system was different back then. Who knows? But my theory is Bai Wuxiang did not ascend. Instead, he became a ghost, and because he had everything that was promised taken from him, he, like, you know, Xie Lian, when everything was taken from him, he just took it in stride and was like, well, that's just the way things are. I'll just become a humble scrap collector. What if Bai Wuxiang just did the opposite and they were like, I'm going to burn everything since I didn't get anything? Maybe they went the Heshan route and they were like, nope, screw this, gonna burn it all. And so they became this calamity. And maybe the calamity that Bai Wuxiang became is the one that destroyed the heavenly realm at the time before Junwu was born to restart it. So the timeline would add up. Maybe Bai Wuxiang is this ancient calamity that's been here since the start. Maybe they started Mount Tonglu. Maybe Bai Wuxiang was like, I'm fine. Junwu's going to come and start this all over again. Well, then fine. We're just going to have more Supreme Ghosts and then see what happens. And just started Mount Tonglu, started the whole process. Bai Wuxiang maybe is the mastermind behind all of this. But I feel like, why was Bai Wuxiang in Shanla to begin with? Why was he taunting Xie Lian to begin with? What was the deal? My theory is that Bai Wuxiang, because he was the crown prince of Wuyong and knew how this all went, saw that Shanla was positioned in the same place his own kingdom had been before, and just came to troll Xie Lian. Just came to see what Xie Lian was like. Oh, you were the crown prince and you got to ascend. How's that? Isn't that funny? Maybe Bai Wuxiang was jealous of Xie Lian getting to ascend and actually live out the life that he'd been promised and that was taken away from him. And so he decided to come for Xie Lian and be like, I'm going to make your life hell because you got what I wanted and I didn't get. Maybe. I don't know. And then he shows up at Shanla and everything goes to hell in a handbasket. And he's like, he just wants to watch Shanla burn and Xie Lian to suffer for getting what he couldn't have. I don't know. I don't know. But that's my theory. My theory is that Bai Wuxiang, or whatever he was before, was the crown prince of Wuyong, and then he became a ghost instead of a heavenly official, and then everything just went to hell there, and now he's trying to, like, and then he went to see Xie Lian years later to kind of get revenge on him for having what he wanted happen. I don't know. I could be wrong. Could be totally wrong, but that's just the theory that I have. So where does the Goshi fall into all of this? I don't think, I mean, that was from 1,000 years before Shanla, so I don't think the Goshi is necessarily the crown prince, right? How would he live that long? But maybe the Goshi is one of the 4 deputies of Wuyong. Maybe the Goshi is kind of like, maybe, you know, we've had ghosts disguised as heavenly officials. Why can't we have heavenly officials disguised as mortals? Maybe the Goshi was a heavenly official at the time that did ascend when Bai Wuxiang did not, and maybe he was trying to, like, keep the good story of Wuyong alive. I don't know. But I feel like there's a lot of parallels between Wuyong and Shanla. And I've been making a lot of comparisons between Bai Wuxiang and Xie Lian. So I feel like there's a correlation there somehow. And the Goshi of Shanla, who talks so highly of Wulong, there has to be a correlation there. So it's like, I see the puzzle pieces on the board and I see how they could go together, but I don't have the means to put them together to see if I'm correct or not. So I'm just like, oh, MXTX. Please don't make me wait till volume 8 to get answers. I was like, damn it. So maybe, I don't know. I feel like my thoughts are so scattered in this chapter set because I'm like, we've been given so much information and it's all tied to everything, but now it's trying to figure out how it works, right? And so Xie Lian decides, he's like, let's go to other divine temples and see if there is a similar mural or a different mural that we can maybe draw some inference from. He's like, let's see if we can find that. He's like, that would be really helpful. And Huachong's like, yes, that sounds like a very decent plan. He's like, we can do that. But then they notice that Pei Ming is gone. We can notice that Pei Ming has disappeared. Okay, so the crown prince, never mind, let me go back to this. I'm totally wrong. I just spent 10 minutes doing a theory. He says, look at the sheen of spiritual light on their bodies. He's like, they're the heavenly officials the crown prince appointed after he ascended. Again, I don't know. I still think Bai Wusheng is tied to all of this, but I don't know how. And I think that Goshi is tied to all this, but I don't know how. So, what the hell? Maybe the crown prince of Wuyong is someone that Goshi knew, and they did ascend, and Bai Wusheng is the calamity that destroyed that heavenly realm and destroyed them. There's a connection there, and it's driving me crazy that I can't piece it together yet. I know what's going to happen. The moment that we get all this information from MXTX and it does all click together, I'm going to be like, are you freaking kidding me? That's what it is. I know that's going to be it, but I know you all are sitting in your rooms, on your computers, on your phones, looking at me going crazy, going, Romania doesn't know. She can't possibly fathom what MXTX has planned. What? I'm very aware of this. I'm losing my mind in this discussion, and you all are just sitting back going, yep, sure, keep losing it. So General Pei goes missing, and they find out he's been captured. But the silver butterflies of Huachong are not only good for scraping off blackened mural coverings, but they're also really good at surveillance. So the fact that Huachong has had this ability to put a silver butterfly on you to monitor you and you have no clue that it's there, that kind of answers a lot of questions. Peisu's like, wait, you could do this the whole time? That kind of answers the whole question of how Huachong has been able to get information from the Heavenly Court. He didn't have to be up there. He just had to equip a heavenly official that came into the ghost city with a butterfly, and he could just listen to and monitor from the ghost city what was going on in the heavenly realm. That explains everything. Like, at this point, Huachong, we've been sitting here wondering, like, how has he been a mole? How has he gotten all this information? Well, hell, he could have just put a silver butterfly on a heavenly official that came through the ghost city. They went back to the heavenly realm, and he could have just listened in and found the gossip that way. And that would explain all of that, right? And plus, you can't talk into the butterfly to another person. They can't hear you. You can only listen. So that's the perfect, like, spy surveillance right there. That's perfect for espionage. So yeah, that entire scene just proves that there's a lot of ways Huachong could have got information without ever having to step foot in the heavenly realm and without having to send anybody to gather information. Because as we've learned, Pei Ming gives the example with the ghost candy. There's been a lot of heavenly officials sneak into the ghost city to get things they weren't supposed to, and it'd be very easy for Huachong to just pop that security device on them without them knowing, and then they end up giving him all the info. Could be. Could very well be. And so then, I like that Ling Wen calls Pei Ming Old Pei. I love that. And so we find out that Pei Ming and Ling Wen have been tied up. Ling Wen still has the Brocade Immortal on. It's acting without her being able to control it, and it doesn't like Pei Ming. Imagine that. And so, yeah. So Ling Wen sells the Brocade Immortal on, and Pei Ming's like, well, how did we get here? And he's like, I'm the one who wanted to come. The Brocade Immortal didn't make me do this. So again, why is Ling Wen there? The Ling Wen tries to defend the Brocade Immortal and says, well, I thought maybe the Brocade Immortal took off from Mount Tonglu because of the summoning. But Ling Wen's like, no, I wanted to come here. And it's like, well, why? Why'd you do that? What? Tell us answers, Ling Wen. And she's like, why are you at Mount Tonglu? Why has your hand been stung? And Pei Ming's like, basically, Pei Su's not making it easy. I like that Pei Ming did not blame Xie Lian for all the bad luck this time. I'm glad that since their discussion, that wasn't the case. Pei Ming thought about it and said, nope, it's Pei Su's kind of fault that I'm here, but whatever. And he's like, I didn't see who it was. I didn't think I'd let anyone drag me to this hellish place if I wasn't injured. So Ling Wen didn't drag Pei Ming away. It was whatever this being is. And Xie Lian's like, well, they can't be that far away because they can't use the distance shortening array. And it sounds like they're in somewhere where there's water and a spacious area. So they're in an underground cavern somewhere. We just don't know where. And then Pei Ming's like, you've killed all these monsters and demons. Like, are you trying to switch over and be a martial god? Like, what's the deal? And Ling Wen's like, I don't know either. I accidentally clashed with the Lord Rainmaster. and I was dizzy afterwards, so someone took the chance to ambush me from behind. He'll show himself sooner or later. Just don't expose your identity. So, okay, they have a fake skin on. Both of them are wearing their fake masks, but whoever it is that curses at them knows that it's them underneath and knows Nangongji knows Ling Wen's real name. So, what? Ah! You all think I'm going to wait to find out who this is, but that's not going to happen. Dang it! What? No! So, okay. I did want to talk about the manwa, because I didn't want to talk about the manwa, yes, because I did get a chance to go look at it. I'll have the images up here to show you all, but I'm going to go to my camera on my phone to see the pictures that I took. But I'll have them up here for you to see, obviously, right? Because we need to talk about this. But yeah, so basically with these images, get my screenshots out that I took here. The chapter was great. We start back off with Volume 2's contents. It's been a long time since I've read Volume 2. So to go back to Lan Chanchu, I was like, oh my gosh. I don't think it's Lan Chanchu who sees Pei Ming and Ling Wen, because I don't think they would curse like that and call Ling Wen by their real name. And I don't think it'd be Chan Yizhen, because they wouldn't call them like that either. They'd be too nonchalant. I don't think it'd be Mu Qing that would have Ling Wen and Pei Ming tied up, because I think Mu Qing is trying to stay under the radar as Fu Yao, so I don't think that would make sense. So I don't know who this person that has them tied up is. I don't know yet. And it's not Rong Guang, because he's still in the jar. I do love Star Ember gracing us with this beautiful image of Xie Lian with these robes and Hua Chong with these looking like the wolf / Red Riding Hood together. That's an amazing look. I love it. I'm here for it. But beyond that, we also have, we see Lan Chanchu again. It's been a while, right? And him, Lord Taihua, and him basically, sadly, talking about Xie Lian being the Goshi of Fengshen. We're talking about Goshis everywhere. Goshis in the manhwa, Goshis in the chapters. Lots of Goshis to talk about. They say Grand Tutor, though, in the English translation. But I do like the way that Star Ember draws Xie Lian. Star Ember draws Xie Lian being kind of very, like, somber and melancholy and morose about the whole conviction. But then Lan Chanchu is just, like, fiery and angry about it. And Maddie's like, I buried you with my own 2 hands. And again, we never really talked about that after that. We know that he says he put him in a coffin and buried him. We're like, well, what happened to Xie Lian then? We don't know. We just don't know. So it's like, not sure yet, right? He's like, why did you do such a thing? And Xie Lian just looks so sad about it. And so, of course, Lan Chanchu is mad. I'm thinking this is Pei Ming out to the side. It's either Pei Ming or Shi Wudu. I can't remember from Volume 2 if it's Shi Wudu or Pei Ming that's out there talking about the Goshi in the background there. Love the design, though. All about it. But I think that might be Shi Wudu. Maybe. I just also love, I didn't have a picture of it screenshotted, but I love the whole time Heshan is just like passed out being like, someone take me away. And Junwoo has them all take him away. It should make so much sense now that Heshan is the Earthmaster because they're dressed in all black. They're the Blackwater. I always wondered that the Earthmaster was never dressed in like greens or earthy tones, but I just assumed that, you know, it's like black soil that's really fertile soil. Maybe that was the reason, and now it's like, nope, they just like dressing in all black. Makes sense, right? Because they're Heshan. And then Junwoo shows up, and y'all, the daddy Woo, the daddy Junwoo, yeah, looking quite handsome there with his beautiful, like, ethereal look, looking very handsome and very manly and handsome. Yes, yes, yes. I'm sure every Junwoo fan was like fanning themselves at that handsome face. But yeah, I like that we get the confrontation. He pats Xie Lian on the arm and heals him and everything, and setting up the duel between Xie Lian and Lan Chanchu that is not going to happen. So I'm really excited that the manhwa is back, mainly because there are not enough official illustrations of Qi Rong out there. I want to see more of Qirong. I want to see Qirong as a kid. I want to see like the flashback arc stuff. I want to see the Goshi of Shanla, what they look like now that we're getting into this. I want to see that. So I'm very, very excited. I may go back to volume 2 before the next chapter set and reread parts of it. I may go back to that volume 2, going into volume 3. I guess it's more volume 3. I'm probably going to go back to volume 3 after this recording and before the next set of chapters, and go back to the Goshi of Shanla and kind of review over them and Bai Wusheng again, because I want to kind of review that. I'm going off of memory right now, and there's been a lot happened since then that I want to go back and kind of check out their whole involvement now that we're learning about Wuyong, and see if there's anything mentioned that might be of help with the next chapter set. But my mind is fried from all this information. So I'm sorry if I'm so scatterbrained in this discussion, but I feel like there's a connection between Bai Wusheng, the Goshi of Shanla, and this whole Wuyong deal. It just feels like there's a connection, especially since the Goshi of Shanla was trying to tell Xie Lian about Wuyong. There seems like there's a connection, and I just want to know what it is. And I know MXTX is going to tell us. It's just a matter of time. So I'm going to review it, though. I'm going to go back to volume 3, review a little bit before the next chapter set, which is going to be chapters 153 and 154. It's going to be a shorter set next week than usual, but I chose it to make a shorter set because after that, part 50 is going to be chapters 155 to 158, which is like 40 pages of content. So the set after next week is going to be ridiculously long. So yeah, next week's going to be a short set, but we'll just see what happens. So yeah, I'm sorry if this was a scatterbrained discussion, but my mind is like swarming with ideas and theories. I need to go back and reread volume 3 a bit and connect back with the Goshi of Shanla and Bai Wusheng before we go into this next chapter set in case if something comes up. So I'm sure I'll have stuff to talk about with that. But in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon to talk more about Heaven Official's Blessing. Bye!